Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Good morning, I'm Ann Schindler, and this is First Coast Connect. Today, growing pains for urban gardeners. We talk to farming and legal experts, hoping to make the city more fertile ground for community gardens. Later in the program, an urgent need for 16 host families to keep kids out of the foster care system. We talk to two experienced parents about what it takes and what they get back. But first, an urban farmer in Springfield says the city is making his plot unnecessarily complicated. Here to talk about the conflict between community gardens and city zoning, we're joined by Nathan Ballentine, founder of Overall's Farm in Springfield. Nathan, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on back the program. Tyler Grant is the president of the Springfield Preservation and Revitalization Council Board. Tyler, good morning.
Good morning.
And Laureen has been the chair of the Duval Food Policy Council. Laureen, welcome back.
Thank you.
So, Laureen, Duval has agricultural roots, but it hasn't always been easy to get the city to accept certain forms of urban agriculture. Why is that?
I don't think it's necessarily that the city does not want to accept certain forms of agriculture. It's just that that particular code does not exist in our books currently.
It doesn't exist, meaning there's no provision currently for urban gardening.
Exactly.
Okay. And so that has been something that has been, an issue for Nathan, and we'll have him explain that. But you have come across this in the past because you previously worked on an issue that a lot of us were very familiar with for a time, which was being able to raise backyard chickens. It was like a huge hurdle for a lot of people for a long time, and it took a long time for the city to sort of come around and accept that. And that was an issue that you worked on.
Yes. While I was with the Department of Health, that issue came up, and we were actually at the time that the Florida Department of Health in Duval County was overseeing the Duval Food Policy Council. So in that caveat, the issue came to our table, and it took a lot of community meetings. Eventually, it led to the city of Jacksonville partnering with the UF Extension Office and the Department of Health to pilot program first, collect data to ascertain what that could look like in the future. So one of the things that people ended up agreeing on that is now currently the law is that people have to apply for a certificate to be able to keep chickens, and they have to attend training to learn how to do it correctly.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so, Nathan, the issue that you're having right now in Springfield is Overall's Farm 3, I guess is what it's known as. This is not your first endeavor. You have two previous parcels that you work, and you also help other people develop urban gardens. So what's the sticking point with this third farm?
Yeah, the sticking point is that at a root level, it's the lack of good code that says, hey, this is permissible by right. We currently have a zoning situation where neither community gardens nor market gardens are permissible really in any way. But we have lots of precedent that that both of those things are permissible. So we have decades of precedent that market gardens and community gardens as a accessory use are just assumed not to exist. Honestly, is how the city approaches it. Is if there's another permissible use on the property, like a house or a business, then the city simply just ignores and pretends like the other use doesn't exist. There is also the precedent of Earth's Farm and Market that operates under a COU.
A certificate of use.
A certificate of use.
And explain, that is something that would allow you to create a use that maybe isn't part of the traditional zoning as it stands, but it's something.
So no, that'd be the PUD. So there's, as I understand it, there's two major ways to have permission to operate a business in the city of Jacksonville. There's the certificate of use route, which is kind of business as usual. And then there's the PUD, which is like, this is very exceptional. We need to kind of carve out its own terms so that it can proceed. And so Earth's Farm and Market on Moncrief, they started as a market garden in 2010. It took them 4 years, but they got a certificate of use. And then they operated without any other primary use on that property until 2022, I believe it was, when they built their formal, wonderful facility for culinary education and their farmers market and such. So that's awesome precedent. But then there are also, lots of other precedent of community gardens and market gardens around the city. And so in a situation where there isn't a clear-cut code permissibility and there is a lot of precedent, then our own feeling is that we should be able to figure out, as Earthas did, a way to operate under the existing code. There are folks that think that that is not how we should proceed. Yeah, that's kind of the baseline context.
Tyler, help us break that down a little bit. I mean, so a
Sure.
certificate of use is something that pretty much any business needs to operate. A PUD that he referenced is a planned unit development, and that requires that you go get a special zoning designation instead of whatever this property is that he has right now, which is sort of like a commercial residential type use.
I think you're CCG, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So there's a couple things going on at the same time. So the difference between a COU and just typical zoning is a building and or use, which is how your COU is governed for tax purposes, as well as the way that the building inspection division of the city looks at your property. The zoning is sort of the way in which the city perceives what can and cannot happen on your property. These two things don't necessarily have to line up, though. When they conflict, the zoning is going to be pushing you towards being appropriately zoned, even though you could necessarily get a COU for something that is not zoned correctly, though you'd be constantly being fined for your zoning breach. Nathan's issue is that some of his farms exist on properties that aren't cleanly zoned correctly because it falls within the Springfield overlay, which does not currently contemplate having the type of business that Nathan runs. So,
And an overlay is basically like an additional set of zoning
is.
rules that an area
Yes.
creates for itself.
yes, and there's a couple of them that exist within Jacksonville, which carves out, they're basically all the historic districts that carve out specific things that can and cannot occur. And these were driven largely by, socioeconomic reasons, policy reasons that occurred, 50, 60 years ago. So, so I mean, the analysis that the city has put forward is encourage Nathan to go for a PUD, which would be a planned unit development. It's it's a $5,000 fee. It would allow him to be an exception that pulls him out of the overlay and puts him in his own special category specifically for his business. The city, as far as like the precedent stuff is concerned, the city has taken sort of like kind of a weighing approach when if you're running a particular type of business, they will say if 51% of your business is a daycare, which is permitted in the zoning overlay, 49% of it is a food service business or a community garden or whatever, they'll tend to weigh on the side of the daycare center. And that's sort of worked out for some people. There's been some issues with that going forward. And that's why we've tried to work with Nathan about navigating this with the city, either going through the PUD route or being creative with that piece of legislation that I sent you that we've been advocating with the city to try to adopt, so that this sort of takes it out of the zoning analysis and some of these like bifurcating or trifurcating definitions, but actually trying to move forward where this is a permitted use by the city. And for a permit, it basically models exactly what the HIN Act is. It gets it done, and the city doesn't have to have like some sort of complicated overarching zoning discussion.
And so the act that you're referencing that you sent, the proposed bill, it's called the Hive Act, and basically it would address urban farming. It would create rules governing, what can be done on those properties, and it would allow the city to permit these to exist. Currently, they don't really have the framework to allow this kind of farm.
Correct. So I picked the Hive Act to be kind of cute because I do beekeeping. We've got a beekeeping company. Anybody wants any honey, I'll hook you up. But the plan is historic innovation in vegetables and edibles is what I was trying to get to. I was trying to be like Congress a little bit, but the plan would be that it would allow exactly like the HIN Act, where for a permit fee of $50, you could be exempted as an urban farm. There's rules on the size of them and how many of them can be within a certain quadrant of each other to avoid it being like, you could kind of have a sweetheart, like someone conveys you property in kind of a sweetheart fashion, and then there'd be 17 within like a square block, which obviously is not exactly what we're trying to do. Though we have had some interesting conversations at SPAR about what it would look like. There's a lot of like kind of interior quadrants within some of the blocks of Springfield, and we've explored what that would look like to basically make them all kind of like owned by the surrounding neighbors and serve as sort of like a grandfathered easement within the city block, that everybody could garden and pick within their own little quadrant, and that it would sort of be like kind of a feature of the community. But this, modeled off of the HIN Act, would allow you to have a very simple permit that goes through planning, $50, and you would be able to have a community garden by right, or a community garden or a for-profit garden by right within any overlay that currently exists in Springfield and in the city at large.
If you're just joining us, we are talking about urban gardening in the city of Jacksonville and some roadblocks to it. If you have questions or comments, join our conversation. Give us a call at 904-549-2937 or email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. You can also reach out on social media. We've got a email from a listener saying, I read about the urban farm business in Springfield. It's my understanding that a PUD is required because the project plans for more than an urban farm, but also outdoor events, space for large crowds, retail sales of products, and other activities that aren't growing produce. Multiple uses often lead to a PUD. So Nathan, that has been part of what the city has said, and we reached out to city officials. They, sent some answers, but primarily it's that, what Nathan wants goes beyond just a U-Pick farm for people who have a subscription. It is a variety of events. It's, possibly prepared food, retail sales, all of these other things that they say goes well beyond the sort of more passive U-Pick farm.
Sure. So it's so funny how this narrative has changed. There's kind of been 4 steps of the narrative that has risen against us. The first is that that you're going to be noisy and sneaky and smelly and messy in the neighborhood, and so we decided to go ahead and build it because we knew that's not how we operated, and so now we have a beautiful example of urban agriculture in our community. And then there was this narrative that we were overblowing our support. And so we just continue to do what we've done is we hosted community events. And those events became iconic anchors in our community. And we were trying to apply originally as a private club because we said, well, our business model is way more than 50% club model. People pay a monthly fee like Netflix, and they can come be in our space. They can come host their own events, and they can pick vegetables. And that's been our business model for 7 years. So we were applying as that. Initially, we were rejected administratively because our property is not 1 full acre. It's 2/3 of an acre, and the city said, no big deal. And this is planning speaking. They said, no big deal. I had a pre-app meeting, and they said, you should apply for a COU by exception as a private club. And so we were about to proceed with that, but then we started having a particular neighbor call in and complain for somewhat frivolous things. But anyhow, this narrative right now that's come up is that we are a retail-based operation is just absolutely false, and I cannot understand why that narrative is being pushed. We had an event. We had one single event that was a fundraiser for Just Food Network, that is the umbrella of Duval Food Policy Council, and we sold tickets on one evening for games and for pumpkins and things like that. And that is the only retail type thing that we've done on the property in 7 years, or any of the 3 farms, excuse me. So that's not the case. Do we host community events? Yes. So a few months ago, there was a concern about proceeding with a private club COU. There was the thought that if we're granted a COU as a private club, then it would open the neighborhood up to strip clubs. And we said, well, I don't really understand that idea, but okay, that's fine. We'll proceed and pursue a community center COU. And community centers host events. They host the community. They have meeting space. They do youth programming. And so we started being public about the fact that we do all these things, right? The Sanctuary Youth from the Sanctuary on 8th Street come over every week for a youth farming program. We have a monthly community meal called Greens and Beans. And that's about all the programming we have on site. We have some impromptu tours and education. But this narrative that we are a plague on the community is just not true. We have 300 neighbors who have signed our petition to support our application for a COU. So it feels contrived. Um, uh, so yeah, that's what I think on the topic.
We've got a message from John on Facebook saying, "Man in overalls rocks. Why should he have to pay $5,000 for a garden in Springfield? And why should the city of Jacksonville charge so much? It sounds punitive. Nathan does a lot of community education to assist in overcoming the issue of downtown food deserts." We also have a call from Adam in St. Johns County. Good morning, Adam. Go ahead.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I just wanted to call in, listen to the show every day, but I'm a huge proponent of, urban gardening, both for edibles and Florida native plants. And I guess really, I just wanted to see, what your panel thought was the best way to take action. Who do we write? Who do we call? How do we, get the word out more that would actually be, an effective way to create change for this?
Laureen, since this has been kind of your bailiwick, I'll ask you to take that question. And I'm just going to roll in another one because I know one of the things that's come up is, well, the state has a right to farm law that was approved by the legislature. So why isn't this covered by that?
Actually, for the Right to Farm Act, I'd like Nathan to take that on because he's had to use that as part of his argument and found out that actually doesn't, in essence, cover you. And why is that, Nathan?
Well, why don't you start
Sorry.
with answering
yes,
Adam's question?
but
Yeah.
we need, going back to what Tyler was saying, we do need legislation locally to be introduced and adopted for anybody who wants to have an urban farm or a community garden, to be able to know how to navigate that correctly without being in code violation.
Yeah. And I mean, that is something, Tyler, that this bill would accomplish. So has SPAR, your organization, taken a position on Nathan's farm in particular? Who are you working with at the city level? And in terms
Sure.
of like what Adam is saying, like what should ordinary people do?
Yeah, so I guess for the update on this, so the Hive Act that I've drafted, we're meeting about it next Tuesday. And we're meeting with city planning. We've got 2 different sponsors that have been interested in it from city council on both the right and the left. So not really seeing a lot of issues there. There might be some, nickel and diming as far as the language is. This was just me pen to paper. So, we could kind of move things around, and obviously would love to have Nathan in on the conversation about what would accommodate that. Because, to Nathan's point, Nathan is not just a for-profit farm with like a Netflix model of like getting people in. Like it is beyond that as a company and as a business. He brings people in. He gives out free water at Porch Fest. He has educational things. Like some of this goes beyond what a traditional for-profit company would do. So finding safe harbor within the code is complicated, and I think that this accomplishes that. And the question about the Right to Farm Act, the Right to Farm Act, we explored that last year. And I read it. It's a 1-page act, and basically what it protects is that if you're a bona fide farm operation, it prevents someone from moving next to the bona fide farm operation and then filing and being able to have standing for a civil suit to sue you in court, saying, it smells like methane from like cow farts, and it's like you should know that because you move next to a bona fide farm operation. So the like bona fide farm operation, the safe harbor that exists, because Nathan's farms are new, they don't necessarily qualify under the Right to Farm Act. It was our analysis. As far as SPAR taking official action, we haven't taken any official position one way or the other, because our typical procedure is that when someone submits a PUD application, we review and then provide guidance, feedback, blessing, thumbs up, thumbs down. We do it all the time. And so we don't usually do that preemptively. I think 25 years ago, we got like burned in the past from people changing what they actually put in their PUD, and then SPAR blessed it before, and it kind of looks kind of weird. But yeah, I mean, I think we've kind of put our money where our mouth is by submitting this to the city and pushing this forward. We think that the business is a valuable business for the community, and we want there to be more of them. And I think if there was like a small little micro farm on every block, and I got to walk out, and I've got a small backyard, and my bees were able to go and pollinate all of Nathan's farms, and we were able to go pick our stuff and not have to drive and get in the car to the grocery store, I think our community would be a lot better off, and I think this accomplishes that.
Nathan, it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, though, that somebody has offered to maybe help pay or to pay the cost of a PUD application, which is this $5,000 fairly daunting amount for any small business. But you are sort of firm in your position that you don't want to go that route, even if somebody were to help you offset the cost?
Yeah, it's because of the precedent. So right now we have a precedent where market gardens can operate under a COU based on the precedent of Earth's Farm and Market. And if I am to embrace this about face that planning has offered, that we should go with a PUD, then we set a new precedent that folks that follow after us would then have to also pay $5,000. And that feels like we'll just shut down the space. I know a lot of my peers, and we're, as a business, overall is positioned where we can absorb that cost internally. We've had offers because of our what do you want to call it, the spotlight that we enjoy in the community. Folks have offered to help cover that from multiple angles, but it's not about our $5,000. It's about the dozens of future market gardeners that would come after us, and potentially even that would be leveraged to then force community gardens to also pay for that. And I think about my peers who could not write a $5,000 check, and then I think about community gardens who, if they get a $5,000 grant as a community garden, it's a windfall. It's like it's a birth certificate, and to then suddenly have to pay $5,000 for not to get a permit, it's for the privilege of applying, right? So it's actually a $5,000 lottery ticket, and you
Because there's
may
no
or may
guarantee that you'll get
there's no
approved.
guarantee, and it requires a lobbying effort all the way to city council. And so the number of small operations that would just de facto be shut down is to me intolerable.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
When you say the precedent, are you meaning that they already have a COU as like a for-profit garden and the city just doesn't enforce it, or they actually, or sorry, they have a COU?
I'm
for
sorry, are
that?
you talking about Eartha?
I mean, yeah, I'm talking about like other example. Like, do they have a COU that's permitted, but you're saying that they're a precedent in the sense that they exist, they're operating, and the city is just not giving them, they're not hassling them.
So both. So there's precedent of somebody operating under a COU, and then there's lots of and I guess it's not legal precedent because it's not in writing anywhere,
Got it.
right?
Okay.
But there's this informal policy of the city not to mess with folks that are doing a lot of these things. But if we establish a very public, we bow to the PUD, then it sets up a situation where the city can say, oh yeah, see, Overall's Farm had to do it, and even with all their support, they had to do it, and so yeah, of course you do, right?
Is there a sense? I mean, we keep talking about Eartha's Farm and Market on Moncrief, and obviously that's associated with the
Clara
White Mission, which
Mhm.
is run by one of our city council members,
Sure.
Jacoby Pittman. So, is
Mhm.
there like some sense that people have that she's getting special treatment, or is it just like what's your sense of that, Nathan?
My sense is that so they were approved under a category of other, or if you dig deep into the documentation, it says food pantry. And my sense is that the code is actually on the top of a fence, and it can be pushed either way, right? So, like, we are a private club. Our farm is a community center. Our farm is a non-accredited trade school, right? All of these things are in our zoning, and so we can lean one way or the other. And the question is which way do we want to lean, or how do we fix the rules? So Tyler's been working on this Hive Act. The Duval Food Policy Council has been working on the Free to Garden Act for about 2 years, doing listening sessions with other urban farmers.
How does the city council's Garden Act compare to what you've proposed,
That's a
Tyler?
great idea. We have no.
You don't know. You've not
I have
seen
no
it.
knowledge of this until
This
morning.
is
Yeah.
pretty recent, but
Yeah.
we're driving it forward pretty quickly. I was not familiar that there was actually legislation out there that's been in the process for 2 years.
Is that something that you've seen, Nathan?
Yeah, we've been. I sit on the Duval Food Policy Council as well, and so we've been working on that.
What are the like the highlights of it?
The highlights is that it would make community gardens and market gardens permissible by right in zoning districts across the city. That's the gist of it, but lots of stipulations around like number of public events and anything and everything like that. On farm sales.
How does it distinguish like what is the community garden versus like the for-profit like subscriber garden? Like what are the differences?
Well, the market garden is is more business model based, and community
Mhm.
garden is more either an allotment or for community benefit kind of basis. Yeah.
I got an email
Go
from
ahead.
Joe. He says,
Okay.
"Isn't this farm already getting, or this farm business already getting special treatment? He's built structures with the required um, COA."
Yeah.
It says he's built the structures in the historic district, and he doesn't have the certificate of use for operating his business. Why hasn't he been shut down if he's not following the rules that everyone else has to? You have gotten some citations, I guess.
hmm Yeah, we don't have any permanent structures on site. So we do have a shade structure that we can stretch some canvas over, but that could be taken down in a day. We did get some citations. We had a citation for unpermitted mulch storage. And we got a citation for trash for firewood that I chopped and stacked up and taken a picture of for our neighbors.
And a COA is a certificate of appropriateness. Is that
That's
Yeah,
right?
correct.
that's
Yeah. It's
the
for the historic
historic overlay.
district. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Um,
And,
Laureen,
and candidly, I think that's one of the. Sorry, I want you to jump into, but I think that might be what the Jacoby Pittman situation is, because they fall outside of a historic district. They're also this Duval generally has permitted agricultural uses, and properties can be kind of reallocated to find safe harbor in that. But the historic district, I think, is what really drills down to make this kind of like it's very specific what you can and cannot do in Springfield. And so I think that's also kind of where a flashpoint is. But
Laureen, I just wanted to ask because, other cities have made the assumption of permission, built into their code. And some cities have kind of gone out of their way now to change the rules so that that's very clear. Atlanta is one of them, but also places, like Portland and Ann Arbor. I mean, there's cities all around. They offer a model that will work for Jacksonville.
We've actually looked, the Duval Food Policy Council, the legislation that we were actually hoping to now meet with Tala to see where we can marry these two efforts together so we're not working against each other. We borrowed a lot of it from St. Pete's in Atlanta.
Yeah, so there are sister cities around Florida that have, kind of embedded this parallel code into their zoning codes. I mean, St. Petersburg is one of them, but Miami, Gainesville, Tampa have all done that as well. Is that something that you're looking at as well, Tyler?
yeah, so I modeled it largely just to make it digestible, not to belittle them, but I to make it digestible for zoning and the city itself. I copied almost exactly the structure and the way that it adopts into the code from the HIN Act. But I mean, we should definitely team
That's
up.
the backyard chickens that were
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, we should definitely team up. We could create a pretty sick acronym between the two of us. This
I
Brain Trust.
know, right?
You know what I mean? But yeah, no, I modeled it off of that, as well as considering just generally, like, talking to Nathan. I mean, it really is sort of tailor made for Nathan's type of business to work in it, especially in the historic districts. But I also wanted to make sure that we were precluding things like a fertilizer company from coming in and saying we want to do row crops in a square block that somehow we were able to get off of an estate sale or something like that, and we're going to test fertilizer in the middle of Springfield. So
Well,
try to
limiting the
market, yeah.
footprint is also a big part of this proposal that you have. And
Mhm.
I guess that's in part because people want affordable housing. They look at a place like Springfield as an opportunity for infill development. That's
Correct.
one of the city's interests. And, but simultaneously, there's kind of this growing interest in agrihoods. And you see that more in the suburban footprint, but basically, trying to build communities around gardens. This is maybe a little bit more backing into it when
Yeah.
you have an established historic neighborhood and you're kind of putting the community garden into it.
I mean, I think one of the great things about Springfield, I mean, this is why we love it so much, is that it has, in parts, it is a blank slate, and we've been retooling our overlay currently to accommodate where we kind of want the neighborhood to go over the next 50 years. It was done 50, 60 years ago in order to accommodate some different like socioeconomic policies and try to move the neighborhood from where it was back then. And now we're kind of in a more elevated, economically driven neighborhood. And so we're trying to drive all of our interest on Main Street, 8th Street, as well as within the interior of the footprint, making sure that we promote density, but also accommodate the unique things like food and community that bring people together, which is like a Nathan's farm. So I mean, countless people. I mean, the backyard behind his house is a gem and in the neighborhood, as well as behind Matt Bishop's property. I mean, people love it. It's beautiful. I mean, I'm an ag myself, so I love it. So
Yeah. And for people who are watching our live stream, we've been showing some glorious pictures of your produce, and it really is a beautiful thing. You're not planning on changing what you're doing there, is that right?
Uh, I I
I
guess
mean,
I don't know what you mean.
you've set up your farm. You don't have any plan to take it down. I mean, this
Oh,
regardless
no.
of
No,
kind of
no,
what
no.
is going forward with the city.
We're gonna keep going. Yeah, we only developed our second and third farms in the neighborhood because we had a unbelievably long wait list from neighbors in the community, and so we want to feed those neighbors who want to eat, and every day that wait list grows longer. Right now, even though we're serving over 120 families, we have 70 plus Springfield neighbors on our wait list saying, "Hey, please, can I get in?"
And Laureen and Tyler, I know that you kind of said that this is an ongoing process of negotiation with the city. You indicated there's some bipartisan support. I mean,
yeah.
who all is supporting it?
So I've talked to Chris Miller about it. He's on board, and I've talked to Jimmy Peluso about it, and he's on board. Both of them have seen copies of the act, and they're both perfectly happy with it, with the way it shapes. I mean, it truly is so narrowly tailored as to not, undermine the Springfield overlay. It doesn't require a zillion meetings, a ton of public comment. Like it's pretty far along, I think, and I think it's so niche and specific. I think it can streamline. I mean, we've already gone where there's going to be a meeting next week with General Counsel and Zoning. So I mean, that's the step before they put the final header on it, and it goes before City Council or it goes before communities.
We should say you are an attorney, so this is not just something you're winging. You've
Yeah,
got some
I
experience.
didn't just wing it. Yeah, no, it's legalese-ish,
Yeah. Well,
So.
Nathan Ballentine, Tyler Grant, Laureen husband, I hope it all works out. It sounds like you guys are moving in a good direction. So thanks a lot for talking
Thank
about
you.
it today.
Thanks.
All right. Up next, we hear from a local couple helping children at risk of entering foster care. Welcome back. A local nonprofit with a mission of keeping families together and kids out of foster care is seeing a growing need for volunteers. Here to talk about it is Dr. Standrelin Terry. Did I get it right, Standrelin?
Perfect. My mom would be proud.
All right, Dr. Terry, nice to see you. She is the executive director of Northeast Florida's Better Together. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
We're also joined by Tiffany and William Lancaster, a volunteer host family for Better Together. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Terry, the goal of your group is ultimately to keep kids out of foster care, but the need is still kind of growing. Explain what the need is. You've expressed that there's maybe 16 host families that there's an urgent need for.
Yes. Here in the state of Florida, we feel like we are going into a foster care crisis. There are over 20,000 calls to the abuse hotline every month in the state of Florida, and a lot of those are neglect. We want to work further upstream to work with parents so that they could keep their children safe and the family stays together to prevent that need for foster care, reduce their risk for getting to that point. So what we do is we work with families who are going through hard times. We provide them support services, job coaching to get them connected to employment, mentoring if they just need to be connected to resources or an accountability partner, a prayer partner, and host families. like the Lancasters here, who open up their home on a short-term basis to the children in the family while we work with the parents to resolve their crisis. And yes, there's a huge need. 17 host families would put a huge dent in that need for children going into foster care.
And so the circumstances that you might be of assistance in could be anything from a parent who's lost a job and sort of needs some time to regain their footing to maybe a family that's affected by a hurricane.
Absolutely. Those are very real and situations that we have run into right here in Northeast Florida. We have moms hosting could go anywhere from an hour up to 90 days based on the needs of the family and the availability of the host family. We've hosted children for 2 hours so that parents could go for a job interview or for a few days while parents give birth to a new child, but they don't have a safe place or extended family that's local to the area who could watch after those children.
So, Tiffany, what is it that made you and your husband decide that you wanted to be a part of this and open your home?
We first heard about the mission back in about 2024, and our heart's desire is to always see families stay together. So when we heard Better Together's mission was foster care prevention and keeping families together, we knew that was something we wanted to be a part of.
Did you have concerns?
A little bit, but after talking to Dr. Stan and other staff members, all those concerns were put at rest because we knew we had the support we would need.
William, what kind of concerns did you have? What kind of conversations did you and Tiffany have when you were preparing for this or considering it?
As far as concerns, we want to make sure that we, could be available for hosting whenever. As far as time frame, working. Say, hey, would we be like, are we going to get calls like 3 a.m? That kind of thing. And sometimes you do. Depends on the situation. And so that was not really a major concern, but it was just like, getting our mindset ready for that lifestyle. Like, hey, kind of any time, any minute, you may get a call and, you're having normal dinner. And then within an hour, you've got a 6-month-old that you're holding that you're going to keep for 3 days.
Wow.
And so you have to have that flexibility.
How do you have your home? And I mean, it's one thing to prepare mentally, but how do you have your home prepared to accept kids at a moment's notice?
Well, one of the things that Better Together does is they come in and do a home study, similar to like what a foster parent would go through with DCF. As they come in, make suggestions in preparation. You have safety locks and things of that nature, and so you have adequate bedding available, and so you're just kind of on standby, and so it just becomes part of the normal routine or the normal setup of the house.
And Tiffany, what has your experience been? How many times have you been called and for what sort of circumstances?
We have had anywhere from 2 children to we've had a baby that was too young to go to daycare, but the mom had just gotten her first job. And so we hosted that baby just during the day and not night times. And we've had other hostings that lasted a few weeks or more. But we're open and available for whatever the need is for the family and the children.
Has it been rewarding? Has it brought anything to you that's been satisfying?
Oh, absolutely. Knowing that we're able to help and be a part of the family's journey and to keep the family together.
So Dr. Terry, this is a faith-based organization, and it is part of the state's embrace, I think, of more faith-based solutions or opportunities outside of the traditional state system. What is it? I mean, that offers you some flexibility and some freedom in terms of how you operate. But what is it that you? How do you vet families? How do you make sure that they're capable of doing the job? What kind of accountability is because the state's not providing oversight?
Excellent. That is absolutely correct. We are volunteer driven and professionally supported. So we have a full team that stands behind our volunteers and are there to provide any type of support that they need. As William said, there are a significant vetting process. So once a family decides that they do want to host children in their home, there is an application process. Everyone in the household who is 18 or over has a level 2 background check. We do conduct the home study where we have a team that comes out to the home, goes over all the safeties, water safety, gun safety, sleep safety, everything. And if there is anything that the family needs support on, for example, if there is a water feature, a pool, retention pond, or anything like that, we require that there be two barriers between the home and the water. So if that family doesn't have a pool alarm or a lock for the door, we have organizations who have partnered with us to provide alarms. We do the little socket covers for electrical outlets, things like that, just to help the family along to be prepared because they are volunteers. They're not paid for this. They're doing it from the kindness of their heart, and we do consider ourselves a ministry. So we partner very heavily with the local church to recruit volunteers because they're already mission minded. Although we will take volunteers from anywhere, this is a group who wants to circle around these families, and we eventually want to connect these families back to a village.
And you said that this is an opportunity to intervene sort of upstream before a crisis becomes really untenable for a family and when they really are going to be separated. So you're not handling the worst abuse cases. You really are handling families that are experiencing more of some disruption, but is the kind of thing that the idea is that the family will be reunited. Is that right?
That is, we are a reunification based program. So if there isn't a clear path to reunification, and examples of that may be where there are situations where the parents want to give up their rights to the children. That's a very sad situation, but that's not something that we step into. Our goal is to work with parents who are already motivated for their families to stay together. They just need that additional support.
Yeah. Tiffany or William, I mean, is there something that you would tell families that are considering doing this kind of volunteer work to think about who you think is maybe best prepared to tackle something like this, qualities that you would want them to have?
Primarily, I think you want to have, a heart of compassion, and you want because you see a family in need, and it is different than your traditional fostering in that when you're because we also have been foster parents with through DCF
Okay.
as well, and so that focus is more on just the children. You're taking care of those kids in the situation they're in. With Better Together, it's trying to solve that root cause of what's causing that disruption. So that's where the job mentoring and those things come into play, and to help the parents so that the families can stay together. So having a heart of compassion for not just the children, but also for the parents as well, and being able to step in, and you can be a host family, you can be a job mentor, or a combination of both if you feel like you can do both. And also, I think the biggest thing too is Better Together doesn't kind of just say, "Hey, great, here's some kids," and then call us if you need us. They're constantly providing support. Bringing by diapers and baby wipes and food and toys, and if there's little kids and educational stuff for older kids, and they're there constantly supporting you, so you don't have any worry about you're going to have to be out there on your own and take care of it by yourself. They're going to be there to support you along the way.
Just a couple seconds left, Tiffany.
Mhm.
Any thoughts that you wanted to add?
Um, yeah, just the support that we get from Better Together with the entire team. It eases anybody who would be apprehensive about joining and being a host home. You
All
don't
right.
have anything to worry about.
Well, Drs. Standerlin Terry, Tiffany, and William Lancaster, thanks so much for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
All right. Up next, total system failure, how the Jags blew a 19-point lead in Texas.
Mayo Clinic, working to solve the unsolvable by using innovations like machine perfusion to help more patients receive life-saving liver, heart, kidney, and lung transplants. More at mayoclinic.org/Florida. The Florida Star newspaper, serving communities for over 70 years, is dedicated to being your source for delivering thoughtful, factual news. The Florida Star is available at over 200 outlets in Florida and Georgia, or at floridastar.com.
WJCT Public Media and the Florida Theater present Jake Shimabukuro live at the WJCT Soundstage Friday, November 14th at 7:30 p.m. Over the past 2 decades, ukulele sensation Jake Shimabukuro has proven there isn't a style of music he can't play. Experience his seemingly limitless musical vocabulary, whether it's jazz, rock, blues, bluegrass, folk, or even classical, on perhaps the unlikeliest of instruments, the ukulele. For tickets and more info, go to wjct.org/events.
Housing is getting so expensive that in a lot of places, the workers a city needs to run can't afford to live where their jobs are. So some places are turning housing into a job benefit.
We are invested in having our employees be part of the fabric of this county, and we had to think of a way to be able to get them here.
That's on the next On Point.
Today at 11, here on WJCT News 89.9.
Democrats racked up big wins on Election Day, focusing on issues like affordability, the economy, and the fight against Donald Trump's policies. For the next installment of If You Can Keep It, we get into the issues that drove voters to the polls and the lessons that both parties can take away from Tuesday's results. That's next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. The Jags lost a seemingly unlosable game yesterday, giving up 19 points to the Texans in the fourth quarter. Here to help us understand what went so wrong is Alessandra Pomprian, sportscaster at WJXT News for Jax. Good morning, Alessandra.
Yeah, well, I would
Good
say
morning.
good morning if they actually won. No, you're right. How sad was that?
It was
loss?
people are really
People
sort of
really
holding their heads.
They should. That was one of the most disappointing losses. You know, some of the older reporters are saying one of the most disappointing losses in franchise history. I've only been covering the team for 3 years, so definitely the most disappointing loss of Liam Cohen's short tenure, but probably the time that I've covered the team. Yeah, they had a 98% chance of winning that game, and then they lost it.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. I think the Jaguars' kryptonite are backup quarterbacks. They just cannot win
Because we
against
were once
backup
again facing
quarterbacks.
a backup quarterback. What?
Yeah. Yeah, so Davis Mills came in. That's because CJ Stroud was in concussion protocol, so he didn't pass it. So he was not allowed to play yesterday. So you're thinking, okay, they have an okay offensive line. You have a backup quarterback. You should be able to just have your way with them.
Does
but
that get in their heads, do you think? I mean, do you think that
I mean,
the
it
Jaguars are
shouldn't.
like, oh, maybe they kind of take their foot off the gas a little bit mentally? Because
Yeah, you would think maybe, but like leading up to it, they were saying like they don't care if it was the backup quarterback. They were saying we're still going to like approach this game the same way if it was CJ Stroud playing. But maybe, they're in the back of your head. But yeah, it was just an awful game at the end. It started so well, but we'll start with the last quarter
Yeah.
that everyone wants to talk about, right? Houston was down 3 possessions in the second half. They scored 26 points in the fourth quarter, and it all started right at the 7:36 mark when they had the touchdown pass to get within 29-24 of the Jaguars' lead. That's when I was like, no way the Jaguars are going to blow that. Yeah, it's 5 points, maybe cushion your lead with the field goal. Then they literally couldn't do anything. And then Houston, from their own 7-yard line, they converted 3 times on third down. Jarian Jones was flagged for defensive pass interference, and then Mills was able to scramble for the go-ahead touchdown with 31 seconds left. And you're thinking, okay, you have 31 seconds. You should be able to drive down the field and kick a field goal. I mean, you have Cam Little who can kick from the 50-yard line, so you don't have to go that far. But then Trevor Lawrence was sacked. They got into field goal range. A flag pushed them back, and then Lawrence again was sacked. And then Houston returned that for the touchdown. It was, it was very disappointing. Liam Cohen said after the game, definitely some probably disbelief. You're like, you got a 19-point lead and can't hold on to it. That's really disappointing against an in-division opponent on the road where you're controlling the game for the majority of it. So it was I think everyone was in disbelief at the end of it because, like I said, at the 7-minute, with only 7 minutes to go, you're thinking, okay, they got within 5 points, but that's only 5 points. And then they were able to, clearly come back. Good for the Texans. I mean, they needed that game to keep their season alive. The Jaguars still in the playoff race, but at the very end of it, they really needed that win.
We got an email from Paul. He says, hate to say it, but it is time for all of the top talent on the Jags to be traded. They need a chance to win a championship with a contender. Let's wish them well and thank them for trying.
Oh, Paul, don't give up yet. I mean, you've already gone through so many years of misery.
Well, is this a season-changing loss, having blown such an enormous lead? Does it affect them beyond just this one game?
I mean, listen, this was rough. Everyone needs to go back and look at the tape, be like, what happened? Because the first half was so good. You were winning by 17 points. I mean, Jarian Jones got the interception, led to the Cam Little field goal. Ventrell Miller forced the fumble on the ensuing kickoff that led to Parker Washington's touchdown. And then he returned that 72-yard punt return for a touchdown. They were out to 17-0 lead like 3 minutes into the second quarter. You're thinking at that point, oh, how do you lose this game? I mean, you're doing so well, and the Texans were doing so bad at the beginning of the game, and then it completely flipped. But you have to look at the defense. I mean, Eric Armstead leads the team with 4.5 sacks. Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker combined for 4 sacks. And like Paul's point, those are the top performers on the defense. They need to be performing much better than that. Josh Hines-Allen just needs 1/2 of a sack to beat or to cement himself in the record book or the franchise record books as most sacks in a career for the Jaguars. And you thought he would have had that way early on in the season. So, they definitely need to work on the offensive line. Danielle Hunter, he sacked Trevor Lawrence 4 times. This is the 3rd time in the last 4 games that the offensive line has allowed 5+ sacks. I mean, that can't happen. It really can't happen. And so they really need to figure out what's going on, because what you saw from the beginning of the season from the Jaguars, when Travis Etienne was running through everyone, you're not seeing that now. And, the Texans were 3-5. You should have been able to beat them. You already beat them once, so why couldn't you do it again? So, yeah, there's a lot that they'll need to figure out. But don't lose hope, Paul. You got this.
Jags are now 5-4. Next game is with the Chargers, and it's at home.
Yeah.
Any changes that you expect to see?
Hopefully Brian Thomas Jr. is back. Brenton Strange should be back. Hunter Long was hurt. That's why he didn't play this last season. So hopefully, or this past game, sorry. So hopefully he may be back to help them out. But yeah, I mean, they need to really take a look. I mean, the Chargers are a good team, and Justin Herbert's a good quarterback. They really need to take a look at what happened with the Texans and try to figure that out.
Well, Alessandra Pomprian, we'll look forward to hearing from you after that. Thanks for being here today. All right. Thanks for listening. That's our program. If you have comments or suggestions, you can send either to First Coast Connect at WJCT.org. And if you missed anything, you can find our entire archive on the First Coast Connect YouTube channel or at WJCT.org. Join us tomorrow when we talk to the Foundational Art Walk creators about how new vendor fees are changing the iconic downtown event. I'm Ann Schindler. You've been listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
The North Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. Terrell Hogan Law.
I'm Wayne Hogan. When people are hurt through no fault of their own, finding the who, what, when, where, why, and how that led to the accident is critical to proving the truth.
More at TerrellHoganLaw.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.
Democrats split over early steps